Welcome to Wales Tech Week 2021. Thank you to our partners. Enjoy the session.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justin Lees. I'm the Chief Technology and Operations Officer at Oggy, and I'm here to talk to you this afternoon about the future for Wales broadband and changing for the good. And have you ever considered what would happen for sustainability, for social cohesion, for the Welsh economy if we took that extra step to boost Wales's broadband? We know that things like climate change have put key dates on the horizon for Wales, and at Oggy, we think it's important to match those dates with milestones for connectivity. In this presentation this afternoon, I'll introduce you to Oggy. You may not have heard of us before, but then I'll go on to explain why fibre is so important for everybody in Wales, how we compare to our nearest neighbours, the socio-economic benefits of accelerating our plans, and ultimately this is all about deploying critical national infrastructure for Wales that's future-proofed for generations to come. So I polled the team here at Oggy when I was putting this slide together, and I was a bit surprised to find that it sort of split the group, which probably I was showing my age. About 50% of the team got it and understood what I was talking about, and the rest not so much. But yeah, that's my cue to not talk tech for a while and just kind of do a little segue into thrash metal. And hopefully quite a few of you have heard of Spinal Tap, a UK heavy metal band that started as a parody and gave birth to a genre of kind of parody films. This was a band that was so loud that their Marshall amplifiers were modified so they could turn them up to 11. Most amplifiers only go up to 10, but they could crank theirs all the way up to 11. And really, this is what we're trying to do at Oggy, is crank up Welsh broadband to 11. So as I said, my name's Justin Lees, and I've spent most of my career in telecoms. I think I calculate about 34 years in the telecoms industry. And more recently, I had left the UK government. I was working in the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, running all of the UK-wide broadband programs. But I've left them in March to join Oggy as the Chief Technology and Operations Officer. And my job is to make sure that Wales has the connectivity it deserves at a time it truly needs it, and turning Welsh broadband up to 11. So I'm going big and I'm going home. And I tell you what this is all about, and you'll hear much more about this as we go through the presentation, is putting lots of this lovely stuff into the ground, fibre optic cabling and lighting up Wales. So as I said, I'm going to introduce who Oggy are and tell you all about the importance of fibre, and but also clear up some misconceptions. A lot of people, when we speak to them, say, well, I already have fibre broadband, so what's all the fuss about? So we're going to clear that up for you. And then we're going to talk about the benefits of fibre, what it means to the Welsh economy, how it benefits communities, what contribution it will sustain, why this matters to you, why should you care about this, and of course, ultimately, how can you get involved? So who are Oggy? Well, we're a Welsh company. We've been operating since 2011 as a specialist provider of business and residential internet services. You may have heard of us under our original name, Spectrum Internet or Net Support UK. We recently rebranded to Oggy. But under our previous incarnation, we have a track record of working with the public sector. We were awarded the Welsh Government South Wales Trunk Road concession in 2020, which lets us build fibre infrastructure along the roads in Wales. In October of last year, we secured a landmark investment from Infra Capital, who are part of the M&G Group, a very, very large investment organisation, and they have investments in a number of digital infrastructure businesses. And they confirmed funding of £200 million, which is available to us to draw down to build full fibre in South Wales. That initial plan includes 150,000 premises, but our aim is to go further than that and connect as many of the underserved areas in Wales as possible in the next 3 to 5 years, and of course years beyond that. We've already started simultaneous construction work across the southwest of Wales, the south central area, and the southeast of Wales. A little bit more about that in a few slides' time. So that new build, actually it's already started on the 1st of June in Pembrokeshire, the Vale of Glamorgan and Monmouthshire. Under our new name, Oggy, we have a very strong Welsh brand, a very strong community and growing community presence, and our objective is to offer high quality, local, hyper-local customer services. As we scale up to meet this ambition, we will be directly creating 140 new jobs within our company, but indirectly through other companies in Wales that are part of our supply chain, creating around about 300 additional jobs. And a really kind of clear focus on environment and sustainability and governance, all aligned with Welsh Government's well-being priorities. So who are Infracapital? Well, they're a large European infrastructure investment arm of M&G, who also own the Pru. Absolutely huge organization, but I guess importantly for what we're doing here is we are one of a number of organizations that are building fibre infrastructure that they are backing. So that includes GigaClear, who are kind of building across England, White Fibre, who are building on the Isle of Wight, Fibrous, who are building vast amounts of infrastructure in Northern Ireland at the moment, SC Telecoms, who've recently rebranded to the name Neos Networks, and Nexera on the continent of Europe. So we're part of a kind of family of organizations, all with this kind of single vision about rolling out next generation fibre infrastructure. Our first phase is underway, as I said, about 150,000 premises. And what we've done is we've appointed subcontractors that are doing the civil engineering work, 3 subcontractors focused on those 3 regions of South Wales. We're already starting the planning for our subsequent phase. We're looking at a provisional plan which would take us to about 500,000 residential and business premises across South Wales, and at that point starting to move up into Mid Wales. And as I say, work is already underway, spades are in the ground, and if you live in one of those areas, you may well see some of our teams out and about even today. So these are the areas where we've started work. We are in Abergavenny in Monmouthshire, Llantwit Major, and Rhys in the Vale of Glamorgan, and Haverfordwest in Pembrokeshire. And these are just our first few build areas. You'll see more towns coming online and being announced over the coming months. So I won't go into this particular diagram in detail, but just kind of suffice to say what we're building is fibre all the way to premises, whether that's a residential or a business premise, and it's a passive network all the way back to our active cabinets. So it means there's no electronics in the cabinets or any of the intermediate points. It's fibre, it's carrying light, there's no electronics there. Ultimately, all of that comes back to an active cabinet, which contains equipment from one of our main networking partners, which is Nokia. And from there, it connects back into our data centers, it connects back into Openreach exchanges, and also ultimately back to internet exchange points in Cardiff, in Newport, in the Vantage data center, CWL1 in Newport, and links in London and links in Manchester as well. So it's a very well connected network. We're building all of this from fresh, we're very fortunate position to be starting with ostensibly a blank sheet of paper and building it from new, selecting our partners and building it so it's future-proof from day one. I guess the really important thing about this is from day one, the technology that we're using from Nokia gives us the ability to support up to 10 gigabits per second in both directions, so download and upload. Clearly, we'll have a whole range of products at different speeds for residents and businesses, but fundamentally, the network is capable on day one of supporting 10 gigabits. But of course, because it's all fibre-based, it can go very much faster than that. And I'll tell you more about that later on in the presentation. So to provide connectivity from those local networks in the towns that we're building, of course, we're also deploying a fibre backhaul network, a backbone network that interconnects all of those towns and brings all of the internet traffic back out to the World Wide Web. So you can see this is our phase 1 plan. So this is in support of our first build areas, which might give you some indication of where we might be going next. But also, even for those areas which we're not planning to dig and lay fibre of our own on day one, what we're doing in each one of those towns is something called unbundling of the BT Openreach exchanges. And what that means is we bring our own fibre infrastructure to those exchanges, and then what we do is through a wholesale arrangement with Openreach, we have the ability to resell their fibre services and run our own products over their fibre. So this is nice from our perspective because it means we can launch with a set of products across a number of areas of South Wales, even ahead of our own physical build. And then at a later date, if and when we build out those towns, we can migrate customers off the Openreach fibre and onto our own fibre. So it gives us lots of flexibility. Of course, we already have an eye towards the next phase, taking us up to 500,000 premises. And what you'll see now is a gradual migration northwards. We've obviously elected to start in the south because of obviously high density of populations down the south. But gradually, as we build out through the south, we'll start to move northwards. So the next phase does take us up into Mid Wales. So we're talking to our investors about funding for this. And within my engineering teams, we're doing the planning and design work and figuring out what that would cost us as part of our business plan. So yeah, it's very much the case that what we've announced in our phase 1 is just the beginning of something which we hope will be very much larger. I alluded to this in the introduction. We are the holders of the trunk road network concession with Welsh Government. This is a 25-year agreement, which gives us the right to lay fibre along the edge of trunk roads in South Wales. So we've started planning and construction activity on this in the kind of very southeast first, but ultimately over time we can expand beyond this. But this gives us the ability to deploy our own fibre, not just locally within towns, but also over a long distance as well to interconnect towns. So this really begins to kind of future-proof our own infrastructure and kind of give us a high degree of independence. So we know that the work that we're doing is really important for Wales. It means that Wales now has at least 2 large-scale network operators with tangible and coherent plans and the financial backing to build out brand new fibre infrastructure at scale. So Openreach already obviously have their fibre build underway, our fibre build now underway as well. And in conjunction with Openreach, it's an important milestone for Wales. It's important for the economy, it's important for the communities, and for a more sustainable way of living. And at Oggy, even as I speak now, we have teams out there in those 4 towns laying an asset for generations to come that's got speed of light scalability. Our initial product offering for residential customers starts at 150 megabits. There's a speeds higher than that, but goes all the way up to 900 megabits. That's 20 times the average speed of Welsh broadband, and actually in some communities that's about 200 times the speed. As I mentioned already, the network from day one is capable of delivering 10 gigabit services. So I'm now going to talk about why fibre is important. So this is you can Google this. This is an infographic that's updated every year. If you Google what happens in an internet minute and then the year, you'll see all the back issues of this. But it's a frightening set of statistics in terms of how many transactions there are against all of these different applications and services out there on the internet. And some of these you might find really quite startling. Globally, there's now 5.2 billion users on the internet. And that's about 2/3 of the world population now has regular access to the internet. And the traffic that's being carried on the internet has trebled in the last 5 years. So that's an annual growth rate of about 24%. And it's not showing any signs of slowing down. And you just take a moment to think about how your own usage of internet at home has changed in the last 18 months. We've seen some very profound changes in the use of the internet, through the pandemic. Fibre is important because what we're doing here is laying the foundations of something which can scale, not just meet today's requirements, but something that will scale for the future. And one of the big drivers for traffic on the internet now is video-based content. It's estimated that about 80% of all of the traffic on the internet is now video-based content. So, for example, what I'm doing right now, speaking to you, is video-based content, but also, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and so forth. The bulk of that content today is standard or high definition content. Of course, there is increasingly 4K content out there, particularly if you are streaming 4K movies. But 8K is already with us. You can buy 8K televisions today, and there is an increasing amount of 8K content available. 8K is 16 times the resolution of high definition television, and therefore it's about 16 times the bandwidth. So just think about that for a moment. 80% of all of the traffic on the internet at some point in the next few years, when 8K becomes the dominant standard, 80% of the world's traffic will go through a 16-fold increase in bandwidth demands. So this is why it's really important that we are investing in fibre now, because we know there is a real step change and an explosion in traffic heading our way, and we need to make sure that our networks are ready for it. So it's probably worth explaining actually why fibre and what's important about fibre, and a few definitions there for you. If you've ever wondered what some of this terminology means, a megabit's a million bits of information per second, a gigabit 1,000 megabits, a terabit is a million megabits, and then we have something called a petabit, which is 1,000 terabits or a million gigabits. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, superfast speeds, which probably many of you have today, range up to about 85 megabits. You may be fortunate enough to be on an ultra-fast service, perhaps with BT or with Virgin Media, that may be giving you hundreds of megabits. Full fibre has the ability to deliver gigabit services, but the important point here is it's got the ability to go way beyond that. Now, how far beyond that? Well, last year, researchers at the Nokia Bell Labs successfully carried 1 petabit per second on a single fibre, and that's a lot of zeros. You can see that at the bottom represented zeros. So that's a lot of information. So that's 1 million gigabits per second on just one fibre. Now, that photo there actually is of this. This is a sample of a fibre, and this individual cable has 1,728 fibres in it. And this is a pretty extreme example of what's being put in the ground. Generally, we're putting stuff in the ground that's more like 432 fibres, or maybe slightly less than that. But the point is, each one of those fibres has got an immense amount of capacity in it. So yes, we talk about gigabit services, and then you will hear other operators pop up, and like Virgin will pop up and say, well, our cable network can do gigabit as well, so what's the big deal? The big deal isn't a gigabit. The big deal is what you can do beyond that. Yes, there are other technologies that can do gigabit, but fibre is the only technology that's going to take us well beyond that in the future. So if you were investing in something for the very long term for your nation, it would be fibre. So the other question we're often asked is, lots of people say, well, I already have fibre broadband, don't I? So, I don't need to worry about it. And the answer is, well, not necessarily so. So here's a slide from Ofcom, and it describes 3 different types of network that are common in the UK today. So the first is the traditional network that uses the telephone lines. It's a metal copper connection all the way from the exchange to the home. The next is what Ofcom call part fibre. It is fibre optic cable from the exchange to the green street cabinet that you may have seen at the end of your road or in your neighbourhood. But the connection from the cabinet into the home is not fibre, it's copper. It's using the old telephone wiring. And then, of course, we've got full fibre broadband where it's fibre optic all the way to the home, which is what we're deploying. Now, the unfortunate thing is many internet providers today describe part fibre broadband as fibre broadband, which we think is very misleading, and actually a number of other internet companies think that's misleading, to the extent that they raised a legal challenge against, well, they first raised a complaint with the Advertising Standards Authority, who didn't uphold the complaint. They then raised a legal challenge in the High Court, which unfortunately was unsuccessful. But today, many people are buying fibre broadband, thinking that actually what they have is a fibre connection, and actually what they don't. They have an old connection. Why should you care? Well, the problem is that old telephone connection is limited on its maximum speed, and that speed diminishes the further away you are from the exchange. So its ability to support higher speeds in the future is really, really very limited. Only full fibre provides the high capacities we'll need for the future. And whilst others call it full fibre, we call it real fibre, fibre llawn. So how do we compare to the rest of the Europe? If deploying fibre is really important to the UK, how do we compare? Well, this is a table showing the percentage penetration of fibre by EU member state. And unfortunately, you can see we are lagging down at the bottom of the table there. It could be worse. It's not as bad as Eurovision. We are at least ahead of Greece and Belgium, but it's not a great place to be. Having said that, we are catching up. This data is slightly out of date. This is 2020 data showing us at 15%. We're now at 23.77% as of yesterday, because of the really good work being done by all of the telecoms operators across the UK. We can't take all the credit for it, although we're working extremely hard to help move the dial on this. But there are lots of companies working really hard to accelerate us up this table. And in fact, the Fibre to the Home Council for Europe, who produced this table, did note in their report as they published this that the UK has the 3rd highest growth rate of penetration of fibre. Now, we're starting from a low base, so yeah, it's not necessarily the most tremendous boast, but we are building faster than most in Europe. Having said that, Wales is behind the UK average at 21.67%. And when I looked through the stats last night, 6 of the 22 unitary authorities are below 10% coverage of full fibre. And Wales overall has greater than 95% coverage of superfast, but as you can see from those stats, the vast majority of that is part fibre. It's not full fibre. So it's got the ability to deliver superfast services, but it will not deliver the gigabit speeds that we'll need in the future. So what we're doing is really about helping Wales accelerate up its own version of this table and be future-proofed. So what's the payback on fibre broadband? Well, I stole this slide from my former team back at DCMS. They very conveniently commissioned Ipsos Mori to do a survey in 2020 of what had happened with the funding that they'd put into broadband programs around the UK. Well, you can see some of the facts and figures there for yourselves, but it does have a very measurable and profound impact on socioeconomic metrics, whether that's turnover of companies, reduction of unemployment, increase in wages, and so forth. So there are very real and very significant benefits that can be measured. And they took a forward look going out to 2030, and their estimate is that for every pound that's been invested by UK, Welsh, Scottish, Northern Ireland governments, they will see a return on that of between £3.50 and £5.10. So, it really does generate huge benefits for our economy and for society investing in broadband, which of course is exactly why we're doing it. So I now want to talk about a little bit more about sustainability, about community, and about the economy. So, we know that updating the Welsh ecosystem is important. We all know this. And through our plans for a more connected Wales, we're also conscious of every other facet that's important on the journey. And today I want to propose a roadmap of sorts with 3 distinct pathways: economy, community, and sustainability. Starting with sustainability, we're already aware of, there are some key dates pertaining to sustainability, and keeping in line with those will be really important. So, for example, if we talk about sustainability from an environmental perspective, this year the UK government enshrined into law new targets to slash emissions by 78% by 2035. Similarly, in March of this year, Senedd Cymru approved a net zero target for 2050 and interim targets for 2030 and 2040. But at the same time, Microsoft has been carbon neutral across the world since 2012 and has committed to be carbon negative by 2030. So those CO2 goals highlight the government's commitment to limiting global temperature rises to 2 degrees Celsius. But as you can see from the Microsoft example, businesses and communities can often be more innovative and more agile than government. So as businesses, we should take the opportunity to lead some of that government thinking on sustainability and think about what can we achieve. Is it manageable? But it will only be achievable with a cohesive mindset. If we think about sustainable growth, Wales is driving inclusive growth through maximising the impact across the foundation sectors, whether it's food or housing, energy, and through a model of regional economic development, which is better attuned to tackling disparities amongst different parts of Wales. Wales's well-being of future generations legislation is unique, and it provides ambition, permission, and legal obligation to improve social, cultural, environmental, and economic well-being. And in fact, Sophie Howe, appointed as the world's first Future Generations Commissioner, she launched our Future Wales in spring 2019 to give communities the opportunities to feed into the Future Generations report and shape the conversation about what we all want to happen. Effortless and limitless digital experiences for work, for well-being, leisure, and learning clearly have a massive role in delivering on that ambition. Full fibre networks themselves slash the carbon footprint compared to their older active copper networks, and they're the foundation of those digital experiences. With fibre in the ground, the marginal cost for us to upgrade to those ever-increasing speeds, it just gives us a foundation for generations to come. Our future Wales organisations, groups, individuals across all the sectors have an opportunity to debate these issues that matter to them, as well as support a collective manifesto. If we think about economy and the society over the last decade, over the last year, we have witnessed a massive shift in digital use, a complete transformation sprint. As people move to remote working, to flexible working, and it's been such a dramatic change, so much so that all of the employees in the digital infrastructure sector kind of building out fibre networks were categorised as key workers, something that you just wouldn't have comprehended a few years ago, that telecoms engineers would be designated as key workers alongside heroes in the NHS and in other organisations. So we've been busy making sure that the infrastructure could cope with this massive shift over the last 18 months. We've not perfected this yet. I mean, businesses are still adapting to this new way of working, and not all of them have reinvested savings from having staff working remotely back into different working environments. The management systems are adapting, and especially in some areas of well-being. But remote and flexible working allows us to embrace almost any knowledge job sector from wherever we want or wherever we happen to be, as long as we have fast and reliable broadband connections. So it means we're no longer tied to our old office spaces. We're no longer tied to the big cities for those dream jobs, nor are we tied to private or public transportation associated with commuting to those roles. So the Welsh Government's already offered advice in this regard with an ambition that at least 30% of the workforce should work flexibly from home or near to home. Even as the threat of the pandemic recedes. After the first UK lockdown, the UK government initially urged people to get back to the office, but their position has changed. And we expect Westminster to encourage businesses to take a lead on a more flexible set of working arrangements. The COVID pandemic's also exposed our healthcare system's reliance on in-person care delivery. The digital health technologies required to support a seamless anytime, anywhere health ecosystem have actually been around for probably a decade. But it's only recently that obviously there's been pressure by consumers for health services to adopt those technologies. And the pandemic really forced that. That surge in telemedicine has accelerated the journey for health services towards a much smarter ecosystem. And while it's not perfect, there's strong growth potential here for health services, which will continue to allow for patient-focused remote care technologies, which are now an integral part of the new and improving sprint to a more prosperous digital healthcare landscape. An example of this is digital physiotherapy. There can't be really a more hands-on discipline than that, but the Aneurin Bevan Health Board, for one, have successfully digitized this experience with patient consultations via video or optionally via a phone call, built around web real-time communications that's supported in most browsers, and they've created a really high quality and streamlined user experience. Another example is a pilot for the use of virtual reality in healthcare, something called Doctor VR, which has been mentored by the Life Sciences Hub for Wales and developed by Rescape Innovation, which is a small Cardiff-based startup. Now, one of the most important things for us here at Oggy and many other businesses across Wales is the power of community. The importance of powering up online life for people across Wales is paramount. And we know we can do this by building real fibre connections right to the doorstep of Welsh communities. I believe one of the most important processes we need to overcome is making sure that we showcase the impact of full fibre in local communities, as well as talking about our commitments to sustainability. The future of Wales's connectivity is driven from those communities, and we think it's important to remember that reliability, trust, continuity and togetherness is paramount. Aside from what I've just mentioned, I want to discuss some other cornerstones of our values about resilience and opportunity and talk about those and unpack them in a bit more detail. So in terms of resilience, well, I guess the many facets to building resilience in communities, the ability for individuals to earn a reasonable standard of living, have access to better economic opportunities within those communities, feeling embraced by the democratic process, to be able to exercise individual and shared agency, opportunities to participate in and feel connected to the natural world, food supply, local culture and language. But maybe most profoundly and most fragile, a sense of shared purpose and common cause. Resilience is built by communities, not for communities. It comes from within. And Oggy is all for communities of every sort, and especially the underrepresented ones. We're part of a grassroots movement to build back better in the wake of the pandemic and the near seismic shift it's provoked. That's where our network is growing first and fastest. And part of that is about digital inclusion, whether it's democracy, healthcare, care in the home, access to technology. It's a building block of modern community resilience. And we're working not just to build networks and services, but also impart the enthusiasm and skills to maximize the opportunity from our infrastructure. And also digital thriving, which, well, it's not the same as digital inclusion. Digital thriving is about putting limitless bandwidths and accessible digital tools in the hands of people that are motivated, and then good things happen. An example of this is the Cluster Research Project, which is an ambitious program. It's a sort of collaboration between industry, Cardiff University, University of South Wales, and Cardiff Metropolitan University. And it's about really kind of creating new screen and news-related products and content. And also, if we think about opportunity, being able to provide work and learning opportunities close to where people live is integral to the growth of community resilience. Wales is one of the most talented, best and entrepreneurial workforces, and being able to keep some of those people working close to home and living in Wales will be a massive boost for communities and for the economy too. People that work near home will spend their income near home, and that's a virtuous circle, if ever I heard one. And we can end that trend for valley communities to be merely dormitories for city-bound commuters. Let the jobs come to the communities digitally, and the prosperity will follow. And levelling up the UK economy, we believe it's going to be possible to hold down virtually any knowledge or service-based sector job from any location with flexible working, provided you have the right digital infrastructure. So I guess, my final sort of slide really is a call to action for Wales to become a leader in connectivity. We need all of the telecoms providers to step up. We've made this pledge internally, and Oggy, we'll continue to tell our story of investment and growth, and we'll continue to invest in the creation of Welsh jobs. We're big advocates for reversing the Welsh brain dump here at Oggy, and we're advocates for bringing Welsh talent home to Wales. Now, remember at the start of the presentation, I said, go big and go home. I meant that quite literally. I'm an example of this advocacy in action. I've returned to Wales after 3 decades of building my experience of creating networks all over the world. And I've come back home and I'm now investing that talent in Oggy. And we think this is something that's really important. We know this is going to be a journey with twists and turns and bumps on the road, but we're not new to this. As an organisation, we're very proud to be Welsh. We're very excited to be ushering in a new digital era for Wales. And for me and Oggy, I know that when businesses are enabled to perform better, we create more opportunity and connection for everyone. And one of the things, again, which we're really super keen to do is to focus on capturing the feel-good energy that we generate from coming together. It's that same contagious and smile-inducing spirit that's generated at concerts, at match days when you hear the chant "Oggy, Oggy, Oggy," when you're meeting up with your mates, and complete that in-person contact more so than you do on a Zoom call. And I guess in simple terms, this is my rallying call for that connection, interaction, and celebration with real connected living leading the way. And the question is, how can you get involved? Well, if you're aiming to start a digital business or you're looking for space to grow, why not place yourself at the heart of the UK's soon-to-be best connected and most vibrant digital environment? You could partner with Oggy. We need collaborators, we need innovators, even would-be future investors to step up with us. Help us to build stronger communities. We want your bright ideas, we want your case studies, and we want your workflows. And if you've been part of building a more resilient and vibrant communities, we want to share your stories and help you on those journeys wherever they happen to be. So, finally, it's easy to be part of the change and the future of Wales and its broadband revolution. We need to take these discussions away from these virtual forums and back into the real world, and we can start that from today. And if you want more information, come and visit us at www.oggy.wales or www.oggy.cymru. And you can visit our virtual booth here at the Tech Wales event as well. There's a great video on there by our Chief Executive, Ben Allwright, and our Chief Marketing Officer, Mary Stevens, that tells you all about the exciting things that we're doing. So thank you for your time this afternoon. Diolch yn fawr iawn, and thank you very much. And I look forward to working with you all in the future.
Thank you for watching. Rewatch all of our sessions online. Thank you to our partners.